Today's lecture is all about the power of complements. But at the very start, before we even start thinking about what strategies to use once we go into complements or once we're looking at complements, let me give you some examples and a formal definition of what complements actually are and what they do economically. So let's take some examples. An obvious one would be computers and software. You can take this computer and you can do all sorts of things with it. You can go on the internet, you can write documents and so on. But if you use particular software, in this case game software, if you use that game software to play with that computer, it's going to increase in value. If you're thinking about skis and skiing sticks, skis on their own are good for getting down the hill, but it's definitely safer and it's more fun if you have skiing sticks as well. Skiing sticks on their own are pretty useless if you don't have skis. Now think of smartphones and apps. If you don't have any apps, then using a smartphone as a phone is still fine. So you get some utility from using the phone as such. But the power of smartphones really comes from the fact that you can install little programs, applications that you can then use basically as a computer on your phone. And that's where the main utility, the extra utility, comes from. So these are all examples of complements, of complementary products that increase each other's utility. So formally speaking, two products A and B are complements if the usage of B increases the user's utility from A and vice versa. Formally, if we wanted to express that, that would mean that the utility from using A and B together is higher than the utility of using A on its own plus the utility of using B on its own. And let me give you a numerical example, just plucked out of thin air, of course. The utility from using a laptop. And again, that's probably the utility you get from using word processing software and so on. Let's say that the utility you get is 50. The utility from software, as such, without a computer, is 0. By the way, what do we mean by utility? Utility is basically how much you're better off using the particular good in question. So if you use a laptop, we're assuming that you're 50 units better off than if you didn't. So what would happen if you combined laptop and software and you were able to use those together? It would be worth more than just the laptop, and it would definitely be worth more than just the software, and it would even be worth more than the sum of the two. So we could imagine a situation where using the laptop and the software is worth 100. So that's the definition of a complement in terms of the user utility. An implication from this is when we think about cross-price elasticity. So that sounds complicated, but it's fairly straightforward, I think. So two products, A and B, are complements if the demand for B increases when the price of A drops and vice versa. So in other words, if the price for product A goes down, then people are going to get to buy more of good B. Okay, and how is that going to happen? Well, first of all, this is what we call negative cross-price elasticity, meaning that the price of one product and the demand for the other product go in opposite directions. Now, cross-price elasticity, as I said, it sounds complicated, it's fairly easy. It's basically how does the demand for one product depend on the price of another product. So let's think of the example of our laptop and the software again. What happens if the price for the laptop goes down? The price for the laptop goes down, then demand for software is going to increase. And why did that happen? How can that happen? Well, price for laptops going down does two things. First of all, we might have more demand for laptops to begin with. So there's more people buying laptops in the first place. And secondly, the people that do buy a laptop anyway will have a larger budget for additional software. So that means that in both cases, so both from new consumers and from consumers that now have more disposable budget for buying software, the demand for software goes up. So far, the complements we've looked at were fairly obvious. I mean, you know, software and computers, skiers and skiing sticks and so on, that's fairly obvious. But sometimes complements can show up at the most surprising places if we think about it and if we look around. So even substitute goods, so goods that would typically be bought either one or the other, can have complementary effects. So for example, if a price cut of the substitute good may decrease market share, but at the same time it can increase the size of the market, the net result, the net effect, can be positive. So again, let me give you an example of this. If we have two cloth shops in the same mall, okay, so you can buy all sorts of cloth. If shop A now initiates a price cut, that price cut is going to do two things. First of all, the people that went to the mall already might go to shop A rather than shop B because it, relatively speaking, has become cheaper. On the other hand, it also makes the whole mall more attractive. So word's going to get around, hey, there's shop A and it's just cut its price, so let's go to that mall and let's have a look around. So this is going to mean that for shop B, even though their prices have not changed, and even though their prices of a competitor have decreased, I might still see a sales increase because I have additional consumers that went to the mall and end up buying from me. So these are surprising complements in some sense, because we wouldn't think of substitute products as complements as well, but there may be particular complementary effects. So I hope that by now you got some intuition of what we mean when we talk about complements. So for now, let's move on and talk in the next couple of lectures about the kind of strategies that firms can implement in the light of complements. So stay tuned and see you in a few minutes.